Smokey Robinson, a music icon with a smooth voice and gentle eyes, has always been admired as a gentle and romantic man. Despite being a music legend with timeless love songs, Smokey Robinson carries within him stories behind the spotlight that few know. Behind that sweet voice is a man who has faced struggles, challenges, and losses that even he had to overcome. Let's explore the hidden corners of Smokey Robinson's life that you may not have known. If you're surprised by these facts, leave a 1 in the comments. If you're not surprised, comment a 0. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe to support the channel so you won't miss more inspiring stories. Just to hold her in my arms one more time. This lyric plays, but the story behind it is much more complicated. Oh, maybe it lasted longer than you think, because at that time, I was married. But yes, this happened afterward, and Smokey Robinson is not the man we think. Beneath that sweet voice is a man struggling with addiction, hiding a forbidden relationship with Diana Ross, and a big secret. He's the father of a child that few people know about. At the same time, Smokey Robinson was facing a tense legal battle with his ex-wife, Claudette. His health and mental state deteriorated visibly. His body became so frail that he couldn't find any pants that fit, resorting to using safety pins to hold his clothes together. Behind the spotlight, Smokey wasn't just an artist with romantic ballads. He was a man slowly falling apart. He witnessed friends passing away one by one, faced isolation, and continued to struggle to retain ownership of the songs that made him famous. As everything began to fall apart, Smokey Robinson never expected that he was stepping into a moment of farewell, saying goodbye to the familiar, his close friends, and a part of his life that once served as a guiding light. As he tried to keep fighting, the past relentlessly followed him, present in every courtroom, interview, and confession he couldn't avoid. The birth of his youngest son marked a major turning point. It was also the moment Smokey was forced to face the woman who had once been his pillar. That encounter ended with her leaving him, kicking him out of their shared home. For many women, betrayal is an unforgivable boundary. Despite having gone through so much at that time, Smokey couldn't fully understand the depth of the pain and the struggles he was facing. So, who is the man behind the gentle smile and the voice that captivates millions of hearts? Before becoming a global music icon, Smokey Robinson was just a skinny boy growing up in the heart of Detroit, a place where everything was harsh and survival was a daily battle. He lived in a cramped house with 11 family members, from cousins to distant relatives, all crammed into a space lacking both material wealth and privacy. In Detroit, if you could still breathe, you might have to share your bed. That city was a maze of broken dreams and lost lives, where heroin wasn't just a stranger, but a familiar companion to many teenagers. But Smokey Robinson was not born to be consumed by that darkness. He was born to create music, something that could lift people out of their bleak reality, even if just for a few brief moments. Smokey Robinson was born to write music, to create melodies that carried hope in the harsh world around him. Before turning 18, he had written over 100 songs, none of which were ever recorded, but each note was a heartbeat, a way for him to hold on to faith amidst poverty and instability. For Smokey, music wasn't a path to fame. It was the only lifeline in the struggle to survive. Each song was not just art, but a way to fight against hunger, fear, and loneliness. And then fate called his name when Berry Gordy, the founder of Motown, first heard that voice. He not only heard a unique voice, but saw a secret weapon that could change the course of black music history in America. In a short time, Smokey Robinson became an icon for a generation of young African Americans, with his slick hair, warm smile, and a voice so emotional it made anyone stop and listen. He wasn't just a singer. He was the embodiment of hope during some of the toughest times. He married Claudette Rogers, the only woman in the group who was strong enough to stand up to him. For a moment, Smokey's life seemed perfect. Hit songs, a beautiful marriage, stylish suits, and big dreams. The world thought Smokey Robinson was invincible, but everything seemed to slip through his fingers, and a new chapter in his life, full of challenges and chaos, was just beginning. In the early years of Motown, Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson spent a lot of time together in the same spaces: recording sessions, songwriting meetings, interviews, and rehearsals. Their careers developed side by side, almost inseparable. Both were signed by Berry Gordy and became key figures in Motown. Their close collaboration lasted for years, and gradually, the line between work and personal feelings began to blur. While still married to Claudette Rogers, Smokey Robinson began developing an unexpected close relationship with Diana Ross. In the high-intensity environment at Motown, where they were constantly together in recording sessions, songwriting, and performances, the bond between them gradually crossed the line of professional camaraderie. Smokey admitted that this relationship developed naturally and lasted longer than he had imagined, despite being married. While Claudette temporarily stepped back from her singing career to focus on family and raising their children, Smokey remained busy with touring, recording sessions, and growing fame. It was this distance that made his relationship with Diana Ross grow closer and deeper, eventually crossing emotional boundaries that neither of them noticed until it had gone too far. They were often seen together at Motown events, and photos from those events captured their intimacy. However, at the time, no one reported on their relationship. Although many within the company suspected it, Smokey never revealed anything about it until decades later, when he said it was a romantic relationship that was hard to let go of. When the relationship ended, Smokey shared that he realized he still had deep feelings for Claudette and didn't want to hurt her anymore. However, by the time the public found out, it was too late. Claudette had to face the pain. While the media didn't report on her suffering, this affair became a huge shock to a marriage that had already been facing many issues, from distance, infidelity, to the pressures of fame and work. Photos from the late 1970s show Smokey attending many events alone, while Claudette, who had always been by his side, was no longer there. Their relationship gradually cooled and became distant. When asked about Diana in interviews afterward, Smokey didn't deny the relationship. He shared that although it was brief, it was very strong and had a significant impact on him. However, Smokey never fully explained the effect this relationship had on his marriage and his music career. But everything became clear over time. Smokey and Claudette officially divorced in 1986, when their marriage fell apart on many levels. From personal to musical to legal, their lives were no longer in harmony. Smokey's relationship with Diana Ross, although just a brief chapter in his life, left an indelible mark. This was not a rumor or speculation. Smokey himself admitted it. His relationship with Diana Ross began while he was still married to Claudette. And even though it was short-lived, the tension it created in his marriage could not be extinguished. Although the relationship with Diana Ross ended, the distance between Smokey and Claudette became more and more apparent. They stopped performing together, stopped traveling together, and by the early 1980s, they no longer lived as a couple. Then a turning point came that Claudette had warned about. "My youngest son was born," Smokey recalled. "I had to finally tell her the truth, and she kicked me out." "I don't blame her," Smokey said. "I mean, you know, most women have their boundaries, and that's where most women draw the line. I had gone through so much at that time, and I didn't realize it back then." While Smokey continued to tour and work at Motown, he began another relationship, this time with a woman outside the music industry. This relationship resulted in the birth of a son. The child was born while Smokey was still legally married to Claudette. Years later, in an interview, Smokey recalled exactly what Claudette had said to him when they first started the relationship. "Don't bring this mess to me." "Don't bring this child to me." When he finally acknowledged the child, Claudette left. Claudette had endured prolonged separations, emotional distance, and rumors from within the Motown group. But the birth of this child pushed things to the breaking point, and there was no way to fix what had been broken. In 1986, they filed for divorce. The paperwork marked the end of their 27-year marriage, a relationship that began before Smokey Robinson became famous. They had 2 children and decades of music, but there was nothing left to bind them together. Claudette largely avoided interviews after the divorce, and when she did speak, it was mostly about music. In contrast, Smokey became more open, especially as he began reflecting on his life publicly. He did not deny what had happened, admitting that it was a turning point in every aspect of his life. The child born from this relationship never made it into the public eye, but the presence of the child marked a permanent change in Smokey's life. His family was no longer intact. The marriage was falling apart, and the personal consequences led to the next collapse: addiction, disappearing from the public eye, and what he described as the darkest years of his life. The divorce not only disrupted Smokey's marriage, but it also disrupted the rhythm of his career. For the first time since Motown began, he wasn't recording regularly. Touring slowed down, songwriting stopped, and he rarely appeared at meetings. When he appeared, he looked thin and exhausted. In the early 1980s, the image of Smokey Robinson, known for his calm demeanor and control, began to fade. On stage, his suits still fit, but off stage, they hung loosely. His weight dropped, his voice became thinner, and his eyes sunk deep. Later, he described himself as a walking corpse. He admitted that he weighed only 120 pounds at 5'11", and had to use safety pins to keep his pants on because nothing fit. "I got to that point just by walking around. I'm 5'11" and weigh 120 pounds, and I couldn't find pants that fit, so I had to use safety pins to hold them," Smokey recalled. His friends noticed the change, but didn't always speak up. Some people thought he was just stressed, but others recognized that the problem was more serious. Smokey stayed away from heavy drugs throughout most of the 1960s and 1970s, only using marijuana and avoiding cocaine, despite it being widespread in the music world. But after his divorce, he gave in. What started as a small habit gradually became a daily routine. Recording sessions became less frequent. Business meetings turned into missed calls, and Smokey Robinson's routine became unrecognizable. He shared that he would look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back. Music was gone. The energy was gone. The longer it went on, the harder it became to break free. But then something unexpected happened. A woman, a church pastor, reached out to him. She didn't know him, but she said she had been praying for him for over a year. She told him that God had shown her that he was on the brink, at risk of serious health problems, possibly having a stroke if he didn't stop using cocaine. She spoke to him about exactly what he was going through, even though he had never confided in anyone. She said, "I don't know you, but I prayed for you for a year in my prayer room, and your name came out of my mouth." And then Smokey walked into her church, deciding to stop, to give it up. He never participated in a formal rehab program, and he never relapsed. For him, that moment, the prayer of a stranger, and his decision to end his addiction were the moments that saved his life. The collapse happened quietly, but the recovery was even quieter. Smokey withdrew from the spotlight, and for a long time, people thought he had stepped away from music. What they didn't know was that he was just starting over. Years after the divorce, Claudette Robinson returned to Smokey's life, not through a phone call or a public reunion, but through a legal document. In 2014, Claudette sued Smokey for the rights to the songs he wrote during their marriage. The lawsuit centered around copyright ownership, which Smokey successfully reclaimed by using a provision in the 1976 Copyright Act that allows artists to restore rights they signed away earlier in their careers when the terms might have been unfair. Smokey filed to claim sole ownership of the works. Claudette countered, claiming that as his wife at the time the songs were written, she had legal rights to 50% ownership, not as a collaborator, but as an ex-wife under California's community property laws. The case not only involved royalties, but also real estate. Claudette argued that the hits Smokey was now claiming were written while they were married, with both of them being part of that creation. She sacrificed her career to stay home and raise their children. Now, decades later, she feels excluded from what she considers their joint creative product. Court records reveal that this wasn't just a dispute over money, but also exposed years of tension, blurred financial boundaries, and communication issues that were never healed after the divorce. Claudette's legal team accused Smokey of violating the 1989 settlement agreement, which required him to protect her financial interests in their previous work. She also accused Smokey of fraud and breaching fiduciary duty, claiming that he not only acted selfishly, but also unlawfully. Smokey's legal team countered, citing copyright law, arguing that the right to restore copyright belongs solely to the author, not to a spouse, partner, or former collaborator. They also claimed that Claudette's legal action threatened new business deals related to the works Smokey had reclaimed. The lawsuit raised a big question in the music industry. When an artist regains control of their work, does the ex-spouse have the right to claim compensation if the songs were written during the marriage? To this day, no final ruling has resolved this issue. The ownership and songwriting dispute between Smokey Robinson and Claudette Robinson was not just a contractual matter, but it also opened up a larger question. Who truly shaped Smokey Robinson's career? Who deserves to be remembered alongside him in his great musical journey? This question was first clearly raised in 1987, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame made the shocking decision to induct Smokey Robinson as a solo artist, despite the significant contributions of the members of the Miracles. At a ceremony in Cleveland, where Smokey was awarded the highest honor in the music industry, the crowd cheered and the music industry erupted in applause. Headlines focused on Smokey's unique voice, his hit songs, and his profound influence on a generation of R&B artists. But behind the scenes, the big question remained: where were the Miracles? The founders and co-writers who had been with Smokey during the early years of Motown were not credited. Ronnie White, Pete Moore, Bobby Rogers, and Claudette Robinson, the members of the Miracles, were not just background singers. They were co-writers who helped develop and perfect Motown's unique sound, blending doo-wop, gospel, and romantic pop to create something entirely new. Together, they made history with songs like Shop Around, You Truly Held Me with Star, Mickey's Monkey, and Go-Go Song. These became the foundation of Motown. Moreover, the Miracles were the first Motown group to appear on national television and the first to tour in the racially segregated South under the Motown name. However, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame honored Smokey, only his name was recognized. There was no joint ceremony, no acknowledgement of the band, and no tribute to his musical companions. The fans' reaction was intense, as they felt it was a betrayal. Music journalists and historians pointed out that Smokey could not have achieved success as a solo artist without the Miracles helping him rise, and that this solo honor was a significant oversight. While the other members of the group did not publicly speak out about their anger, their disappointment was evident. Claudette Robinson, Smokey's ex-wife and the only female member of the group, fought to be recognized in court. But now, she and the other members of the band had been erased from music history once again, this time by one of the most prestigious organizations in the industry. Smokey never made a strong public statement about this omission. Some felt he had no control over the decision, while others believed he should have spoken out more. In any case, that moment passed, and it wasn't until 2012 that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame officially reversed its decision. The Miracles were inducted 24 years later, and Smokey Robinson was there to witness his group finally receive the recognition they deserve. "I've always felt that the Miracles should have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame," Smokey said. "And when they inducted me the second time, I was really surprised. It was a great honor." Finally, the recognition the Miracles received marked a turning point in acknowledging the group's role in music history, and further illuminated the contributions of Smokey Robinson and his band members, who helped create some of the greatest musical milestones. By the time the Miracles were finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Claudette Robinson's representation, the plaque was updated to reflect the group's contributions. But for the fans who remember the first induction in 1987, the damage had been done, and it could never be fully repaired. The moment the group was supposed to share together had passed, and the recognition was never truly complete. After the Miracles were inducted into the Hall of Fame a decade later, without all the original members, it was hard to overlook the loss Smokey Robinson felt. He had outlived most of his original bandmates, and his loss was even greater as those closest to him had passed away. Marvin Gaye, Smokey's close friend, was one of the biggest losses. They weren't just Motown colleagues, but true friends. They met almost every day in the early years of Motown, and Smokey was the one Marvin would call at night to share new melodies over the phone. When Marvin experimented with his own songwriting style, leading to the album What's Going On, Smokey was one of the first to encourage and believe in him. But in 1984, Marvin was shot and killed by his own father, just one day before his 45th birthday. This left Smokey shocked and heartbroken. However, Marvin wasn't the first loss Smokey had to endure. Sam Cooke, a music legend whom Smokey had always admired, was murdered in 1964. Smokey not only admired Cooke's voice and talent, but also respected the way he maintained his standing in the music industry, protecting himself and his career. The sudden death of Sam Cooke when Smokey was just 24 years old deeply etched itself into his memory and stayed with him throughout the years. The loss of his brother Arthur Franklin and longtime music director Seal Franklin in 1988 was also a heartbreaking event. Arthur Franklin, Smokey's longest friend, had been with him since they were children. When Arthur passed away in 2018, Smokey was there to deliver the eulogy at the funeral. Standing before world leaders and fans, Smokey shared his emotions as if he were back in Detroit, where they had sung together on the porch as children. As Smokey turned 80, he continued to perform, but without the voices that once surrounded him. The original members of the Miracles, who had been with Smokey since the early days of Motown, gradually passed away. Bobby Rogers, with his wonderful harmonies and strong stage presence, passed away in 2013. 4 years later, Pete Moore, the bass player and vocal arranger for the group, also passed away. These deaths made Smokey one of the last surviving singers from that generation. Smokey's dressing room was no longer as lively as before, and memorial services became a frequent event. While the music continued, his close friends were no longer by his side. Then, the pandemic hit. Another challenge Smokey had to face on his journey. Irreplaceable losses forced him to keep singing, but now, he was singing alone. In 2020, Smokey Robinson turned 80. He had overcome many challenges throughout his life, from lawsuits, addiction, divorce, to the deaths of most of those who had been with him from the beginning. However, nothing could stop him like COVID-19. As the deadliest wave of the virus spread, Smokey contracted the disease. At first, he only felt fatigued, but then he started having trouble breathing. His oxygen levels dropped, and he was taken to the hospital in isolation, without his family, music, or any movement around him. The man with the unique voice could barely speak more than a whisper. In later interviews, Smokey shared that what scared him the most wasn't death, but the fear of losing his voice forever, an inseparable part of who he was and what he had done. Thinking he was about to die, Smokey made a miraculous recovery. Despite the challenges he had faced throughout his life, he continued to bring beautiful love songs to the world. But behind his emotional voice, there was loss, pain, and destruction. Smokey Robinson was not just a great songwriter. He was a real man with his own struggles, troubles, and battles. However, despite all of this, Smokey never fully gave up on music. He continued to write, record, and perform. And throughout his journey, he maintained his voice. Though the challenges may have knocked him down, music was the place where he found comfort and the strength to keep going. So, let's look back at the inspiring journey of Smokey Robinson, a music legend who has overcome so many challenges and still stands strong, continuing to create and contribute to the world. His timeless love songs not only left a mark on the hearts of fans, but also serve as proof of the power of music in overcoming pain, loss, and all hardships. Though the ups and downs of life have tested him, Smokey Robinson remains a symbol of faith, resilience, and an undying love for music. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed inspiring stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos. See you in the next touching and meaningful stories. Goodbye.